Greg, I really appreciate you making time to have the conversation today, man. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Mike. Excited to be here.
So you are a prolific writer and blogger, and I read everything that you put out there in the world. And one of the things that really hit me lately that I know is on your mind is that the future of learning is moving towards community. And I'd love to just use that as our starting point today.
Yeah, I would love to talk about that. And I think there's a lot of even long historical trends that are taking us in this direction, right? Like you look through the history of education, one thing that no matter the form or the modality that is important is results, right? Is like, are you creating transformation? Are you delivering results? And certainly there have been stages, certainly in like online course selling, where some people have focused on just make the sale and who cares what happens after that. Like I remember the first online course I bought, it was a landing page with a PayPal link. And then I was sent a zip file to my email, and I don't think they cared or looked at what was in the zip file because it was just like a collection of PDFs and videos that had no connection to each other.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so I bought something, not sure what it is.
Yeah.
But today, what people are really buying is results, right? They want transformation, they want results, they want change in their life, whether that's health and fitness or business and so I think everything in service of that makes a healthier business for whoever's offering it as well. But you just feel better having a bigger impact too.
So I think the people that are out there in the world, whether it's a business or you're an individual creator, whatever your context is, it's time to move your thoughts away from how good is the material or how do I keep iterating. I mean, that's kind of table stakes, right? If you don't have great stuff out there in the world, somebody else is going to have great content. But it looks like the real competitive landscape has moved to who can build the best community.
Yeah, it's a big part of it. AI can be a part of it as well. And I come back always to delivering the result and why are we going there? How do we deliver the best results for the people who are consuming what you're offering and the change that they're purchasing from you? Because they don't buy the ability to watch your videos or show up at your training session. They buy the change that you're offering. And community is really a huge piece of that. And especially with the introduction of AI, which I think can be super powerful in building and running communities and save you time doing it. But it also makes it that much more important that we're having real, authentic human connections. And it takes the load off you as the owner of the community or the curator of it. If people come initially maybe for you, your brand, your name, your content, but then they get in there and they meet others and suddenly the value is exponential because each connection point they have in that community is someone else they can learn from, connect from, network with, bounce ideas off of. And the biggest communities I've gotten the most value out of, I've often come for content or the curator or the brand. And then when I get in there, the reason I'm still subscribing and staying today is really the membership and the connections I make there.
What's fascinating, what you just said, is it connects to an article I was reading yesterday about a study that was done on AI usage, and particularly with ChatGPT, in that the more that a person uses ChatGPT on a regular basis, the higher their loneliness factor is.
Yeah, I can see that. And my brother was sharing with me an article of someone who had been basically gotten into carrying on a essentially romantic relationship with GPT. And so it's such a powerful and incredibly useful tool, but you're right, you can get sucked in. And so all the more important to have those real human relationships. And I think even the in-person connection, like even if you're and I think I see a good mix of people doing digital community every day and in-person community once a year out of that group or something like that. And having those kind of connections where then the digital part becomes that much more impactful because you actually have shook their hand and hung out with them.
Well, and you and I belong to this organization called MMT, which has an annual event, but the rest of the year we're really connected through this secret private Facebook group. And I realized when I joined the organization that, I'm like, okay, well, there's this Facebook group and I guess we chat back and forth and it was kind of interesting. But then I met the people and had a physical experience with them. We were all together down in Cabo and I walked away with that. And all of a sudden that group took on a completely different lens for me as a result of having that in-person experience. And it's really been a once a year type thing. I think, existentially, like we are wired for connection as human beings. And as AI is taking away that connection, I think, what I hear you saying is if everybody's going towards AI and making their experience of their company more AI related, and if you want to stand out, you got to go the completely opposite direction, which is like, how do I bring humanness, connection, and community back into my business in a deep way? And then use AI to support that, but don't make AI the center of the universe or the sole experience that people have with my business, because as we just talked about, that's going to drive loneliness. And I don't want customers feeling lonely in their interactions with my business. I want them feeling connected and as part of a community.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's very powerful is use it, right? Use it for
Yeah.
good. There's lots of great, like, I don't think we can get through this being afraid of it and staying
No.
away from it, but using it for where it's incredibly powerful, being clear about where you're using it. And so like in a community, you can have it as a moderator where you fed it all of your expertise and it is in there. And we help people with this, as you know, and where it's moderating and seeding discussion, whether it's one-on-one basis or on a group setting. And then you can still be part of it and dive in and be like, hey, this is my AI helper, but it knows everything I've taught it.
Right.
And you can use it when I'm asleep, right?
Yeah.
But I'll jump in as well. And that takes a lot of the load off of you too in managing customer relationships.
Yeah, I think it's great. I feel like, when I think about, do I want to go search through a series of FAQs? Like when I go to somebody's website that I'm, a customer of, and I have to search through FAQs, I'm like, this is not a good use of my time. So my natural proclivity is, okay, now I got to like send an email to the company, or I got to like, get on an online chat, which I really don't want to do. All I want is getting an answer, which I think in that case, I'm so happy to use an AI, like no problem at all to get something simple solved. But when I think about my connection to the brand, I think about, well, are there other people like me out there in the world that care about this thing as much as I care about? Like, I want to connect with them because I know that my learning, my growth, my accountability, all of those things are so much better. They're like supercharged when I'm around people that are wired like me.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're not really going to share a lot. Like I find at least my relationship with AI, that sounds so odd, is
Right?
very, but it's one dimensional. Like I don't give a lot, right? I'm not like, hey, look at what I'm up to. Here's my update for the day. I'm taking, right? Whereas
Yeah.
you get in, but obviously in a community, it's two dimensional. You're giving, you're sharing and getting feedback on the things that you're doing. I mean, I do share ideas with AI and it gives feedback, but you're sharing in a totally different way. Plus, if it's a relationship with a brand, if it's your company, it's your brand, that can be monodimensional if it's just customer to you, because it's generally about the topic that they're interested in and what you provide, and you don't branch out too much from that. But you introduce the concept of community around your customers, in context of learning as well. And suddenly it breaks out into multidimensional where maybe they came to work with you for consulting services and then they're talking to someone in the community around selling their company or something just completely, or pickleball, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But that really increases the overall value of being associated with you and what you're building.
I'm really curious. Like, so you have a lens that not many people have. So with your company, Thinkific, you have, large companies that have communities that are doing learning, and they're using your platform as their way of building that community and providing value to those communities at the same time. So as you think about the AI landscape, like what are you seeing from a learning perspective out there in the world that is impressing you, that you're thinking like, yeah, this is the use of AI that I can see really benefiting our customers?
Yeah, there's so many. One, the most basic one, and one that we're actively engaged in, is we have the benefit of people have uploaded over 1 million courses to Thinkific. And so
Right.
taking their content, and I want to be clear when I say taking, we're only using it back for the person who gave it. We have a bunch of core principles ethically around the use of AI internally. One of them is we would never use one person's content to train models for someone else.
Right.
There's no cross pollination there. And so and so basically consuming the content for that someone has put in already and handing them back an avatar bot, an agent effectively that knows what they know, or multiple ones if they have multiple areas of expertise or instructors, giving that back to them and giving a lot of their time back and creating this ability to do that. The other cool thing we can do is add in the ability for them to sell and market more, because typically people who are building businesses, running communities, and teaching, especially if training is a part of it, which is a big part of what we work with people on, they're less likely to want to sell, right?
Right.
It's hard sometimes to be the teacher and the salesperson. So, but bots can very politely be persistent about selling or remember, and they don't feel shy about saying, hey, you asked a question about this. We actually have this bigger program that you might want to purchase. So I think that's a real benefit for people.
I think it's interesting too, because I think there's a dynamic where if I'm in relationship with someone and I feel like they're pitching me, then it's almost like it's changing the context of our relationship, right? If they're pitching me something because they're like, hey, we really want to sell this, versus, hey, we've had a lot of conversations about this thing would be valuable to you. And if they're uncomfortable with that conversation, my spidey sense is going to go off.
Right.
That something's not right. And the something that's not right is their uncomfortableness about selling, not that anything's wrong with what they're selling me, but my subconscious is only going to see it as something's not okay with this conversation. Whereas if a bot's doing it, I don't have a human level conversation or connection piece with it. It's just a thing. As good as it is. And so whatever it's putting forward, my thought is, well, it's only responding to what I've told it. So I get it. Like, of course it's bringing this forward because I've said a lot of things and it's just reflecting on that. That's cool that it's doing that. So all of a sudden the sales piece of it doesn't feel salesy. It just is salesy. It feels responsive.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It can extract that if you're not comfortable with it. I personally think sales can be a great way to build great relationships, but for people who are less comfortable with it, when you extract it out, it can it can be doing it any time of day when the person wants it. When someone's like, hey, what do you have to offer me? It's like 2:00 in the morning, your time, you're asleep, and it's saying, actually, we have these 3 programs.
Yeah.
And you wake up to someone's been sold something that they really value and appreciate. And then another area I think I was sharing earlier was this company LipDub AI, and just really cool tech that we'd been playing with a couple of years ago, but it's really evolved now where it basically can do the full translation of video content and even create net new content where effectively you speak whatever language you want. Like your lips are moving in sync with the language, it's your voice, and you're able to speak whatever it is. So just creating a really amazing experience where it looks like you speak Portuguese or French or whatever you need to. And certainly for people teaching, training, creating educational content, that's can be so powerful. Even just able to reach new markets. Like you could potentially 10x your business just because suddenly you go from 1 language to 20.
Well, the ability to say to a client, yes, we can offer this in all the languages that you need it offered in, within one platform, and to not have to create multiple, to go and actually physically get the translation done, even if you're using AI to do the translation, the time and energy it takes to actually get that as somebody to sit down and to redo all of those videos. There's no economies of scale. Like each video you have to go reproduce, or you're putting subtitles in, or you're dubbing it. But again, as you say, like dubbing, you can tell that it was done in a different language, and it's not, I don't know, like maybe some people like watching that with subtitles when they watch their shows on Netflix. I struggle with that. And so the ability to have your lips match the language that it's going into and not having to go recreate all of that content. Because the problem is, I know in our world, we believe in Kaizen, which is that we never deliver the same thing twice. So that means we're always iterating and improving our content. But for all video content in different languages, that means we have to redo each of the videos in each of those languages. So the ability to redo a video and then have that overdubbed into the other languages that we're working with is a massive time saver.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really powerful. Yeah. There's so many of these use cases that are popping up.
And what else? Like, what else are you seeing in the AI world right now that from a company that is in the learning space, that has a community that is wanting to use AI to kind of supercharge the offerings that they have, either offerings to their clients, improving the community focus, building new content? Like, what are all the different things you're seeing AI wise that are outside of the ones we've talked about so far?
Yeah. And the big one for me, I think that applies really across anyone in any business, is AI is now becoming the first place I go with a new question or idea. Even if I plan to take it to someone else, like my CFO or our lawyer or someone, I'll just fire it in and see what it gets. And it really can expand upon the types of, and my prompt is usually, here's my question. What would you ask me to give me a better answer? And then I find that really fleshes out my thoughts a lot more on whatever it is I'm approaching. Then I go answer those questions for it if I can. Say, give me the best that you can now that you have these answers. And I find that just generates a phenomenal first draft of whatever path I'm on.
My wife parents by ChatGPT now. She said to me yesterday, she's like, as good as I think I am, as many articles that I've read and books that I've read on parenting, and I also read a bunch of parenting books too. She's like, the level that ChatGPT is at right now to help to support conversations with our daughter in a really clear, articulate, empathetic way. She's like, it doesn't make sense to me to not be collaborating with ChatGPT before I make a parenting decision anymore.
Wow. Yeah, it's in there for every use case. And there's different models too. Like I've gone in and said, what model is best for this? And it's come back and said, you should use a financial model, not GPT. You should use
Okay.
Claude for this.
Yeah.
The one area I actually haven't gone, strangely, because I think it's the most common use case, is drafting my content. Like I still haven't engaged it in the actual writing content.
Okay.
Yeah, if it's published, I haven't used it for that, which is so strange because I think that's probably the most common use case out there.
Well, I will say what's interesting, and I'll throw this out to you. So I'll tell you how we do it. So
Yeah.
when we're starting content, like a new stack build, we actually put it into voice mode and we just sit the phone on the desk and chat back and forth with it as if it was a brainstorming collaborative partner.
Right.
And say, I want to build a program. Like, okay, cool, let's talk about that. And we start talking about the various ideas. This is a model. This is a framework. This is a book I was thinking about including it. Oh yeah, the model from this book would work really well with that. And you just chat back and forth and then say, okay, from our conversation, could you build me a cohesive outline for a 90-minute program based on everything that we've spoken about so far? And what that does for our designers is it gives them a really cool launching off point where they can still feel their creativity
Right.
of being able to write and craft the thought process. The other thing it's really good at is we've said, okay, we do a lot of bespoke development for executive teams and for senior leadership teams or operational leadership teams where it's not really an existing content stack. We're producing it based on an emergent conversation from the last meeting. And in one example, the designer is like, well, there's a model here about what we talked about last time, but it doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
But in the conversation, we realized there was a 2x2 matrix, but we couldn't really figure out we knew the X and the Y, but like there's also like there's lines on the side. We need to name the quadrants. So like, let's just stick this into ChatGPT. Yeah. So ChatGPT came back and said, oh yeah, I know exactly what you're trying to do. Here's the model and here's the diagram of what that's supposed to look like. And as a result of that, we were able to like come up with this really simple model for our client that is so great. So from a design perspective, like we would have probably spent, the designer and I who were chatting about this, we would have at least spent an hour working on that model. Mm-hmm. And ChatGPT had it for us in seconds. And then we said, okay, well, we want to make one small change to it. It brought it back and then physically gave it the model. We sent it off to the graphic designer to pull. Now, we could have just actually used the plugin for Canva to ChatGPT, but then we have to get our templates in. But so there is a way to even streamline this even further. So those are the ways that we found that thinking of it less as the net content creator.
Right.
Although I will say, once you have enough of your writing and you dump that in as part of a custom instruction, its ability to mimic your voice it's perfect. You know, the amount of editing that needs to be done is very, very minor. I would say it's less than 5% needs to be corrected. So
yeah. I like the voice thing because I can see doing that in the car.
Well, it's funny. I was listening to, Chris Sacca, the venture capitalist. He is, oh God, what's his venture capital firm? He was just on Tim Ferriss's podcast. He was one of the original investors behind like Airbnb and like, I don't know, a bunch of these like crazy large startups. I think he was behind Snapchat too as an investor. Anyway, so Chris, what he does is he puts his AirPods in, he sticks ChatGPT in voice mode, and then he goes for a walk. And then he talks to ChatGPT on the walk just to kind of like download all the things that are going on in his mind. Because he finds when he's walking, that's when he has his best thoughts, and uses it as like a brainstorming partner to just wander with. And, when I think about the number of great ideas I've come up with when I've been walking the dog or like just, walking on the seawall here in Vancouver solo, not listening to a podcast. And then I'm like, oh, I got to write that down. Or, oh man, I wish I had somebody I could riff on this. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it later. And then, I write it down and then it's like, when am I going to get time to do that? So I haven't tried that yet, but I'm going to do that this week. Just like literally take ChatGPT for a walk with me.
Nice. Yeah. I think I will try that one as well.
So what else do we need to know? Like, what else do we need to know? You have such a crazy lens on the future of learning and how community and learning are shifting and changing. What do you see as outside of AI
Mm-hmm.
and community,
Yep.
what else do you see happening in that in this space of learning for adults that we really need to be aware of?
Yeah, there's certainly a shift more towards the recurring payments. There is still, one-off for sure, like buy a course, but the recurring, and that ties closely with the membership community concept. And then another piece that is sort of the shifting go-to-market, and it's tied a bit to some of the downside of AI, but really shifting go-to-market where people who are being really successful are focused more on that transformation and result, and actually using that as a flywheel to bring people back in and do their marketing. So what the difference is, early, like 2010, 2015, 2020, and a lot of the marketing around digital products, I think, was very funnel oriented. Pour as many people in the top of the funnel, and dollars come out the bottom, kind of thing, in a most
Yeah.
negative kind of view of it. There was even a funny one that I think JP Sears made of that whole thing, a funny video. But more and more I'm seeing it as more a flywheel, where
Okay.
you don't need thousands of new customers or leads as much as you need to deliver great value for the few that you bring in. So even if you have a small group who's passionate about the subject, you bring them in potentially on a recurring basis where they're paying for a membership and continuing to get value. But then you create an experience that's so impactful and transformative that they return, refer, repeat recurring revenue business for you, like they repeat purchase, but testimonials and referrals. And so it creates this flywheel where you don't have to be spending and doing as much on marketing.
So the idea being that your community is your marketing and your sales, like the fact that you are delivering value to a small subset of your audience. You might have a large audience, but you start to recognize that a very small portion of your audience is willing to pay a lot more to be part of this community. And that community then is really the community that drives the growth, that your future growth.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is going to become even more important. Like already we're seeing the shift away from search and Google to asking your questions of AI. And so there's, at least currently, less ability to really market through that. So you see decline of things like AdWords and the shift in marketing away from that. There is still lots you can do on social, but social is going to face a problem too of the influx of all of this AI created content, which just makes it harder to stay present on social. And so more and more that top of funnel attraction is going to become harder and more competitive. But if you're able to deliver amazing results, use it as testimonials and referrals, then you create that flywheel where you don't need to be spending as much on that top of funnel.
It feels like, if I was to use an analogy, I forget what the percentage of worldwide email that's actually spam. It's really high of the emails.
My inbox, maybe 90%.
Yeah, same, right? Like even with the spam filters, right? Like I'm like, how much is, like, I don't need any of this. So I think AI is possibly doing what, in an even bigger way, what spam has done to email, AI is going to do that to social. So it's going to basically crowd out the social space with AI produced content, where just like email, we start to tune it out because we're not wired for connection with the AI. We want to be wired for connection to real people. And as we've talked about, today on the podcast. So the ability to have your community be the funnel it's still social, but it's like actual social. It's not social
that you
media,
own.
it's social.
Yeah. And you get to own it and bring it off platform. I still think, at least today, there's still a way to cut through the noise on social for sure. Like I wouldn't rule that out.
No.
Being authentic and getting out there and doing that, there's still lots of benefit there. It's going to get harder, right? As AI learns to even mimic the authentic, right? I think at some point, if we haven't already, we're going to see an AI avatar, a little tearful about a trauma that happened in their life that, led to a change that, you're really connecting with this person, only to find out that it's not.
Yeah. There's no way to avoid that. It's coming, right? Like, it's here actually right now. I think it's interesting, we talk about the space of true authentic connection. I look at people like Colin from Amalfi Jets. I'm not sure if you've seen him on Instagram or not.
I've seen one or two. Yeah.
Yeah, he's really good. And the thing is, it's clearly shot on an iPhone.
Yeah.
I don't know how much of it is like apparently it's all real and it's not scripted. They're real client interactions, but it's all being shot on an iPhone. It's the CEO. He's authentically him. It's a very niche product. You'd think, why would you be, pitching private jet memberships and private jet travel on Instagram in this way? It doesn't really make sense. I've seen him do that really well. The guys that are big into the watch reselling, the high-end watch reselling in New York in the
Yeah.
jewelry district, they've all blown up on YouTube and on Instagram by just literally they're doing their job, which is to
Yeah.
go buy a Rolex or whatever for a client.
Yeah.
And then they're just filming the interaction of the negotiation,
Oh,
which they were going to do anyway.
yeah.
And then they're pumping that out as a reel. And then and then that's really what's driving their business. The car resellers, so higher end car resellers, not like a brand, but like, one guy who owns a dealership who's trading cars back and forth. They're just recording they're just recording their work effectively. They're not performing for this. They're just recording their day-to-day job. And I find myself getting sucked into this content. And I'm like, I don't care about any of these things. Why am I spending so much time watching it? And I think what I realize is that there's this like great authenticity to it. Then I'm like, these are cool people doing cool things. And even if I don't care about it, man, it's compelling to watch them. There's a guy out there that goes and mows people's lawns and power washes their driveways.
And why are you watching this?
I don't know, man. Like,
why am I watching it?
Yeah, right. I've watched an inordinate amount of content of these guys doing this thing, but like he's just like a nice guy going out saying, I'm going to do your driveway for free if I can post this content on YouTube. And the people are like, okay, like power wash my driveway. I mean, I don't know how much power washing you've done, but like personally, I get like a massive sense of satisfaction in power washing something because the before and after is so definitive. But watching somebody else power wash apparently is content I like to consume.
Yeah, I power washed for a few summers, so as part of a painting gig. But yeah, I mean, a lot of it, the cars and the watches and even the jets, it kind of plays off of that antique roadshow, Pawn Stars, Slash, Boss Undercover, whatever stuff, where there's this almost like addictive element to consuming it. So yeah, there's still lots of ways to cut through and do pretty awesome stuff out there.
Well, I love that. I love that, that you've mentioned that, hey, don't give up on social yet. Like AI is coming, but there's still a way to, to actually stand out in this space. Yeah. What else is on your mind? Like, as you think about the future of, because what we're really talking about is we're talking about learning and growth, right? We're talking about the fact that people I think our generation, and when I say generation, the generations that are around today are more concerned with personal growth and improvement. And I don't want to conflate that with the hustle economy. I think there's a whole piece around the hustle economy. Let's park that. But just this concept of learning and personal development and growth, which I thought was really big when I was a kid, like reading Stephen Covey's 7 Habits and like, all the other Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. I read those sorts of books and I was really keen on that when I was younger. And I felt like I was really driven, but I feel like there's like entire world, the Ali Abdals and the Tim Ferrisses and the Diary of a CEO. A lot of these are podcast based or YouTube based, but they're really focused on how do I improve as a human being? And you're right at the intersection of all of this, right? Because you're hosting, as you say, 1 million courses have been loaded up onto Thinkific. So where do you see that space of like human development and learning and growth? What are the trends that you're seeing in that space that are to watch right now?
Yeah, I mean, well, the confluence of some of the things that are getting us here, I think, and you highlighted some of them is just that or I think why generations now are more engaged in it is, one, it's become a lot safer and encouraged to talk about your weaknesses or challenges or traumas. So whether it's a health and fitness one or a career one or a mental health one, we're much more open and sharing about this. And I think that allows people to be more comfortable with seeking change and growth in an area. And that combined with the other thing you mentioned on the podcast side is just the media and the technology is there now to make it so much more accessible, right? Like and you can find this from the comfort of your own home, right? And then you can also digitally find a community of people who have a very unique challenge that you do, or trauma or difficulty or just growth path that they want to pursue. And so the confluence of those two trends, I think, is only increasing. So we're only going to see more of this. And then that another piece that is sort of empowering this in a different way, I think, is the freedom for people to take what they're good at and go share it. So you have more trends driving people to seek it, more accessibility because of technology, and then more people able to offer it. Whereas if you go back not that far, a lot of learning and education, yes, you can go to the library, but also was sort of ivory tower educational institutions or just schools. And you're tied to learning just in case. So going to university to get a degree just in case you need the subject that was taught on Tuesday in 1996,
Right.
as opposed to just in time, which is I've just been assigned a cool opportunity at work. I'm going to learn how to do this today, right now. And I
Right.
know I can find a resource to help me do that. So all these, and then also the fact that you've got experts can now, if someone has expertise or experience in an area, they don't have to be a PhD in it. They can
Right.
suddenly go and start sharing that and creating transformation and impact in others' lives. And that's opening up that ability to learn from more people like yourself that you resonate with instant access to them and what they're offering.
What's interesting is that you say about this. It reminds me of a conversation I had on the podcast recently with Laura Beauparlant, and she talked about personal branding, the CEOs and entrepreneurs that run organizations. Because in the past, it was all about building your company's brand, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was the brand. And what I see shifting, I think that connects to what you just said, is the fact that now the CEOs need their own brand. Because people want to know, well, who's behind this company, not
Mm-hmm.
just what is this company actually selling. And there's
Yeah.
this rise of needing to build the company brand and needing to build your personal brand at the same time. And when you think about the fact, as we talked about earlier, that people are wired for connectedness and they want to be connected and have relationships, it's not to a brand. It's either to a community, but before they get into that community,
Mm-hmm.
they need a connection to the person that's behind
Mm-hmm.
that community. So how are you seeing for your customers that shift and in how
Mm-hmm.
they are approaching their marketing?
Yeah, there's so much to unpack there. I think it's really interesting. One, I would say definitely we're seeing more brands get a CEO out front, but also other members. Like you don't need to stop there if you're not the
Yeah.
CEO. I think there's opportunity. There's certainly tons of people at Thinkific who are getting out there and putting their personality. I think Aaron Morin on our team is definitely more known by our customers than I am.
Yeah.
So there's lots of opportunity there. One thing I'm cautious of here is I looked at Jim Collins' research in, I don't know if it was Good to Great or Great by Choice, but one of the factors they saw in the difference between the successful companies and their comparison less successful companies was an inverse relationship to how prolific the CEO was in the media and press and getting their name out there. So actually the opposite, right? Like a more prolific CEO getting their name out in the press and media was an inversely correlated, had a negative impact on the results of the company. I think there's more than meets the eye there. I think it's that speaks to the mentality of CEOs at the time of the study, that they were more about their ego and spent too much time in front of the press.
Yes.
I think that it is a great power to unlock, and I wouldn't steer clear of it for that data reason, but I would make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, right? It's not about your ego, it's in service of the company, and don't spend too much of your time on it, because you do need to build the company first. Like you can go out there and build the most amazing personal brand as a founder, and if you haven't built a great company, it won't matter for much, or at least at some point it'll catch up with you.
I think you're nailing it. The study you're talking about was in the book Good to Great. And the reference that they made there was they said there's a level 5 leader, and a level 5 leader is a selfless, servant-based leader who's focused on strategy, focused on vision, focused on driving a great culture in the organization, and really cares about the people that work in the organization, has a deep sense of empathy, and versus another leader who is more focused on being out in the press and cares more about their external appearance, irrespective of what's happening inside the company. And the reality is the average CEO in North America of a large company lasts about 4 years, and then they're out because the board decides that they're not getting the economic performance that they need to see. So they looked and said, well, what's common about those CEOs? It was ego-driven CEOs that are out in public for their own benefit, not to drive the culture of the business or to drive the marketing of the business and to put a face to the brand.
Yep.
Those CEOs only last about 4 years. Whereas the ones that truly cared about their company, cared about the mission and the purpose of the business, and recognized that they have a public appearance, that they need to be out there to be boosting the brand and using their own ability to be in front of larger audiences to speak about the mission, to speak about the purpose and the vision, to enroll people in it. Those leaders had a much, much longer tenure in the organization. And I think the shift we're seeing, as you say, is this one to, you got to have the intent, not of I'm going to be famous, but I have a responsibility to be the public facing entity that shows the values, the vision, and the purpose of our organization so that people can relate to our brand in a human way. If you have that intent, I think that's the ones that the leaders that seem to be thriving are the ones that are doing that. The ones that are doing press tours, going on the news, are doing performative videos that are really driven at scripted questions that they're just answering with their answers that they don't even know they were written for a teleprompter. That's dead. Like, that's dead.
Yeah. Yeah. And it helps too with time management. For me, the big question if I'm asked to do something, a podcast or an interview or something like that is always, or go speak on stage somewhere, it's how does this benefit the company?
Yeah.
And that really helps me determine, is this a hell yes, I can fit it into the calendar, or a no?
Yeah, which is fair, right? I mean, there's lots of opportunities as a CEO. We get asked all the time to go speak at conferences, to speak to audiences, to be on a webinar, but those, they feel very performative in nature, and they feel like they lack a certain sense of authenticity. Whereas like this type of format where it's a conversation, people are they're getting Greg, right? Like this is like, I know, because this is exactly what you and I talk about when we're just like, hey, like we were in San Diego a month ago. Our conversation is literally what led to the podcast. I left that one of our conversations. I'm like, we should just record our conversations and put it out into the world. So as you think about the role of CEO, because you run a significant organization, how is this shifting how you're personally thinking about the way you're showing up as a CEO? Like you've got you've got a significant company, you're thinking about the future of learning, but at the same time, as the world is changing around us and we're talking about the CEO as a personal brand, how is this changing how you see yourself in the role that you play?
I mean, it's one thing that hasn't changed through the whole journey is just constant learning. Constantly trying to almost catch up, right? I'm always feeling like I'm a little behind, and we're moving so fast. I've got to learn to operate at the next stage. But I would say the shift has been, initially it was more tactical and skill based, and now it's more and more strategy and leadership and culture. And so, initially I had to learn things like, how am I going to use this tool or do our taxes? And then now it's a lot more of, how do I become a better leader? How do I articulate our strategy more often and more frequently and more clearly? How do I just, serve and lead the team better? And that personal growth, even just how you show up, even emotionally in a room, and manage your statements, can be really important. And then learning from others, like a big thing for me is big growth area in the last few years is I've been hiring more and more people who are just way beyond me in terms of their skill set in particular areas, and saying, look, I really want to, like, you're here and you can do this way better than I can, but I also really want to learn from you, and I'm watching what you're doing, and I'm not going to do your job, but I want to know how you do this part of it. This is amazing. How can I learn from that?
It's interesting. Steve Jobs has this wonderful quote, and he's like, you don't hire smart people to tell them what to do. You hire smart people so they'll tell you what to do. And I've always thought about the role of CEO being, you're an inch deep on most of the things, on a wide set of things across the organization. And then there's a few things that you're an inch wide and a mile deep on.
Yeah.
And everyone that you're hiring, you want them to be absolute, inch wide perspective and a mile deep in that thing that you're never going to have the energy to be in. And so if you surround yourself with people like that, and then as a CEO, do the kind of like 2 to 3 things that uniquely you can do and no one else in the organization can do, and then hire for everything else. The CEOs that have done that we've developed over the last 25 years seem to be the ones that are the most successful. If they have the level 5 leadership and everything else that we've talked about, but if they have that mindset around people and their senior team, they seem to be sitting in their zone of genius most of the time.
Yeah. And I think this can apply really in a lot of roles within an organization. Like some of the leaders I've seen of smaller teams even have been more or less successful because of their ability to go and do exactly this. Of specific example, like someone bringing in a team that is less qualified than they are. And I don't know the motivation. Maybe it is staying on top or protection of that, or maybe just poor hiring decisions. And then another leader who's hiring people who are well above them in ability. And it's interesting because the one who's hiring people better than them is seeing more career growth and opportunity because they can do that.
One of the VPs of a significant organization that we work with called me one day and she said, hey, listen, you've known me for 10 years. Knowing what you know about me, what do I need? What's my next step of learning? Like, do I need to go do an MBA? Like, what's next? And I said to her, well, you're on the executive team of a very significant organization already.
Mm-hmm.
That you love and you want to stay with. And so I think you're thinking too much about the boat. And I think you need to think about the tide, because when the tide goes up, your boat will float higher. The tide's your team. Tell me about your team. And her response was like, yeah, tell me about the leaders that report to you. There's 5 of them, right? She's like, yeah. I'm like, how good are they? Like, can any of them take your job? No. What's the developmental pathway for all of them to be able to step up into your role? I'm like, I would take all that time and energy you think you need to spend on yourself and put all of that into developing the people that work for you. And if they're not the right people, I would go find people that scare you and hire them to report to you. That's where I would put my time and energy.
I needed to hear that today. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, it's a
good reminder, because I was like 60% on that path, and now I think you've just taken me over and there was like a couple decisions I had to make this month where I'm like, right, that's what's most important.
Well, here's the thing. Like, if you think about a C player, like somebody who's not really doing great in the role, and you put a ton of time and energy into them, the best outcome you're going to get is a B player. If you take a B player in a role and you spend a medium amount of energy on them, the outcome you're going to get is they're going to be an A player. If you take an A player and you spend a very small amount of focused time with them, you create a superstar. Mm-hmm. How much time do you actually have in your day focused on coaching and development? Mm-hmm. Where would you want to spend that time knowing that that was the equation for you as a leader? I think most people would say hiring A players and putting focused time and energy into making them superstars. And if I've got some B players that I see have potential, I probably should spend it there. Should I be taking C players and trying to make them B players? Hell no. It's just it's an efficiency thing. It's a terrible use of time and energy. And it probably means it's not the right role for them. And they're going to be more successful in a different role in your organization, or in helping them find a role in a different organization. I got one last thing I got to ask you before I let you go here. So if you were able to, like, jump in a hot tub time machine and go back to your early 20s, and give yourself one piece of advice, you're going to, you go back to your 20-year-old Greg, you're going to become an entrepreneur, and you're going to go build this significant company that is helping, millions of people all over the world to become better, to truly transform. And you're going to be a leader of this significant organization. What's one piece of advice that you would give yourself, back in your early 20s or late teens?
Yeah. Okay. Never mind the fact that I'd be scared to go back and change anything, because I like where I landed, family and everything wise. Or that I could just say, go buy Bitcoins when they first come out. I think I would get me on the track of it's all about the people and the team and the culture sooner. So some of that came intuitively, but I think just really leaning in that everything comes down to working with great people. And whether that's a choice of a team you're joining or staying with or leaving or building, that is just, if I think about the things that have gone well and the things that have gone poorly, it's often just pretty much always just come down to the people I've chosen to work with.
Focus on the people. I love that, man. Greg, thanks for making time to be on the podcast today.
Thanks.